Good morning, Georgette.
Good morning.
This morning we are interviewing Georgette Turney at the Fairhope Public Library as part of the project of the Veterans History Project. And today is April the 19th, and we're very happy to have her here. Georgette was born in Belgium, was 13 years old when the war began, and lived through that. And in 1946, she married an American soldier and moved to Arkansas. So we are going to ask Georgette about her years during the war, and also her experiences when she came over here as a war bride, and any stories that she might be able to tell us that her husband shared with her about serving under General Patton. So, Georgette, would you please tell us about, perhaps you'd like to start with the day that the war began.
The Friday morning, I woke up 6 o'clock in the morning, and of course it was a school day, and we could hear shooting and things going on. Everybody ran on the street. What I remember, there were a couple of, they looked like little sports airplanes. And there were these two German airplanes, and they were shooting them down. They were Messerschmitts. And everybody said, you know, of course the radio said, Germany had attacked Belgium. I was sort of silly that morning because we got out on Thursday afternoon, a half a day, and I goofed off, and I did study my lesson, and the teacher I had the next that morning, oh, she was one of the toughest ones you ever faced. And you know what? I was glad the war started. Needless to say, it was not very long when, you know, we all regretted it. And we, of course, Belgium can sustain itself for 3 months when they close them off from the rest of the countries. So food started beginning to get scarce. And with the money in their pocket, my parents couldn't buy it because it wasn't there. So it was not very long when we started having to hustle for food. And I was sort of one of these, you know, kids that I didn't scare that easy. And I'd go with my mother, and we'd go to the farmers because, of course, they started black marketing, and you practically had to beg for, well, in Belgium they sell with kilos, you know, and you had to practically beg and then pay big money for 1 kilo of potatoes. But me being with my mother, I got, you know, my mom says, well, how about that, you know, young lady here getting 1 or 2 kilos of potatoes? And I say, we always had plenty to eat, but some of the things that you bought, hey, I was a teenager, and I could eat. I was the biggest eater in the family, I think, and I stayed skinny all of my life. But
well, what other privations did you have besides? When did you start to feel like privations of coal or fuel or any materials, anything like that?
Well, we never hurt for coal because my daddy had his own business at that time, and he had a drag line, and of course in those days it was all machinery went by steam, And so the Germans allowed them, of course, a big ration for the coal. And it came in bricks like that. And my mom and my dad had one weapon, that they could trade some of that coal with them farmers for potatoes or a little grain or whatever, you know, they had. Now we had plenty vegetables because my mom and dad had a big garden, and they raised them, but they always did, and they raised a lot. But speaking of meat, I ate more meals without meat than I did meat. Our ration was that per day of meat. So Mom saved it up and then bought the roast on Sundays for Sunday. Eggs were very scarce and expensive. Butter was very scarce. And in the next little town to ours, they had a milk and butter factory. We'd get up at 4 o'clock in the morning when we were still allowed. And I'd go with my mom, and we'd stand in line till 8 o'clock in the morning, and there already would be a big line. And, you know, you'd get a pat of butter. Of course, I got one too. Pay for it. But as my mom used to say, here we butter the street, but not the sidewalks. That meant the crust was not buttered. And what little butter you got, it was some sort of margarine.
I assume, yeah.
You know.
When did the German troops come in and occupy your town?
Oh, the day that they declared war on Arkansas, on Belgium. The next thing you know, you saw, but most of them were on motorcycles. And then they started moving the troops in, you know. But they decided that we would run away, because a lot of atrocious things had been done during the First World War, and people were so afraid, and a lot of people starved to death during the First World War. So we loaded up the bicycles, and off we went. And we took, you know, the most necessities. And I remember that I heard them talking that Papa and Mama, my grandparents were too old to leave. And they stayed, so he made his business over to the grandparents. And since he had been, you know, a manager of a shipyard, and that's what his work was, he knew that the boss he used to work for, his brother had one in the southern part of France, and that he could go there and make a living for his family. Well, we got to the French border, and they would not let us in. They closed the borders out. So we had to go find another place. And that they had known some people where Dad had a contract building a road from Bruges, Belgium to Holland. And they said, we know we have food there. But we never did get there. And so we met up, my little sister and I. Well, she was 9 years old.
And you were 13 at the time.
And I was 13. And we were all on bicycles. And she rode one as well as we did. Well, Papa had the lead. And then my older sister, then I, and then the youngest one, and Mama brought up the rear. And that little sister of mine, she could be a little devil. And she kicked my bike and threw me in a ditch. And the ditch was full of needles, and they would, it itch. So she got into trouble. And here is a young man, but it is getting late in the evening, and we were all give out, because I don't know how many miles we rode on those bicycles. And he was the nicest young man, and he said, "Are you people looking for a place to sleep?" My mom said yes, because the kids are give out. We're ready, take a little rest. He said, "Well, follow me." And he took us to his parents. And they were farmers. They had built a new house, but they kept the old house for storage, for hay and things. And they let us sleep there. But Mom had sheets with her, and she made us beds on hay, and we thought that was something.
I'm sure. How far away was this from your original hometown?
Oh, that was probably about, it might have been around about 60 miles or so.
And your family considered that to be safer than being in your hometown?
Right. They figured that'd be safer. And so we stayed there almost a month. But Belgium was, totally run over then by German soldiers. And then they decided, well, we might as well go back home. And we started back home one morning at 6 o'clock. And we were not too far, we ran into them. And they were, I will never forget that. These soldiers, they were in horse-drawn wagons. And we were sitting there waiting for this, whatever. Oh, there was a regiment of them, I think. And we were sitting there in a ditch on the side of the road till we could pass again. And this one German soldier jumped off that wagon. And he handed my little sister a little white bag, and it had candy in it. I will never forget that. And it was white candy, little rounds about that big. My mother jerked that away from my little sister. Mama understood that he said that was candy. And she said, "Hey, Mom, can I?" "No, I'm going to eat one of them. This may be poison," because she was afraid to throw that away. You never know what they're going to do to you. And we traveled on, and finally, looking for something to eat, and we got to Ghent, which is a pretty big city in Belgium. And we were in a park there, and he went and scouted, and he found the bakery.
Was that your dad?
My dad. And he came back, and he had gotten a bunch of cinnamon rolls. And we were happy to have them because we were hungry. And my little sister was so give out. And I forgot how many miles we were from my dad's sister and her family, and my grandmother was staying with them. And we took our little dog, and that was my oldest sister's job. She had a basket on the handlebars of her bicycle, and the dog was riding that. He kept jumping out because he thought the dog, he should ride with my daddy. And well, we went as we left, to run off. We went by my grandmother and saying goodbye to my aunt and uncle and my aunts, I should say. And they begged us, leave Tony here, leave Tony here.
That was the dog?
That was the dog. And of course, we cried and okay, we'd leave him. And it was a good thing.
Oh, yes. Well, Georgette, tell me now, what were as the years passed during the war, did things change much for you from the beginning of the war? What were some of the experiences that you had as the years went on?
They got worse. And then we stayed under curfew. And one time, of course, there were some Belgian people that were German-minded. And we called them the Black Brigade because they wore black uniforms. And one time, they put a bomb on the mayor's house and blew it up. And then we really got it, but it did not kill anybody. And the Germans demanded 25 people that they were going to shoot for what they did. And that was the underground did it. That were sabotaging everything they could, to help toward the end of the war.
Are you talking about the resistance?
Yes, the resistance. We called them the White Brigade.
The White Brigade versus
Yes.
Black Brigade. Yeah,
and anyway, but the mayor said no, he did not want that at all. And they punished us. And we had a curfew. You could not get on the streets before 7:30 in the morning. And this is in July. And it is daylight till 11:30 in July in Belgium. We had to be off of the streets at 4:30 in the afternoon. 2 weeks we had that. But as far as food was concerned, it just kept getting harder and harder and harder. And, there is always a way, where you can come up with a few things. And believe me, and I did it.
I'm sure.
We hustled. We'd go to the grain fields with rakes and rake up grain that would fall, and then thrash it. And one of my uncles came up with a deal, and he came up with a mill where you could grind that mill. We did a lot of things that, that you came up with.
I'm sure. Tell me, when did you first become aware of the concentration camp that was near you?
Oh, it was not long. It was just a little while. As a matter of fact, my best girlfriend, her name was Georgette. And she had a brother, Jeff. And he was in resistance. He spent 8 months in that concentration camp. He didn't live long after he got out.
Oh.
And you know what we would do? I'd go over to Georgette's. And during the war, you were not listen to the BBC. Because, oh boy, they called you went to the fort. But Jeff was in the resistance, and his mother had a very, very powerful radio. Of course, they had the front door, and they had a back entrance also. And Georgette and I, we would go sit on the front steps of that house. And her mother would take up the back entrance and exit. And when we seen the little car coming, it was just a little greenish painted car, just a little box, and it had a thing on top of it, and it was radar. And they knew exactly when the BBC, 8 o'clock is when they, you know, had the...
Broadcasting?
Yes, and they, you know, we knew they would send orders to the resistance. But then the Germans eventually start putting stuff in it where you couldn't hardly listen to it. And when we seen that thing coming from way off, we beat on that front door. Pow, pow, pow. Then Jeff knew that they were on the way. And so that's some of the things us stupid kids did. And we were, you know, like 15, 16 years old. And that's how we found out some of the things. And then the resistance found out what they were going to bomb that way also. And of course, when America entered the war, that was our, hey, that was a big victory.
When did the American soldiers first arrive in Belgium, in your area?
In 1945. And it was, let's see, we were 44, in September of 1944. And then they were still fighting in Belgium.
How far were you from Bastogne?
Oh, not too far. About, it's about an hour and a half by car. But we could see it. And I thought a long time, and one man wrote about it in Russellville, Arkansas, and I was trying to think, what was that we called them, they were screaming memes, and the Germans, they were on the other side of the Maas River. They call it the Maas in English. And we could see them shooting them screaming memes. Had it not been for General McAuliffe and them in Bastogne, they would have come back. And we were scared to death. But, you know, after the liberation in September of 44, we could tell they would capture German soldiers and they would sit on the sidewalk of the streets. They wouldn't even move. And we knew that, you know, Germany was really losing the war in the winter of 44. And we had picked up enough German where we could understand them, see. And we overheard some of them talking, and they said, if we're captured, we hope it's by Americans. That's when the Russian front was going on too, you know. And you could pick up a lot of things, you know, and of course, you know, he should have never attacked Russia or George Stalin's.
Well, Georgette, tell me, how did you meet your husband?
Okay. In July, the end of July, 45, I was scrubbing, helping my sister clean. And she lived on the canal, right close where that bridge. And they had fixed up the place, and I was helping her. And I had just gotten through scrubbing the sidewalk and cleaning the gutter, and I was at the canal rinsing out my brooms and my mops, and so the bridge, well, there was no bridge, there were those were pontoons. And the pontoons were out, and there was a jeep that with 4 soldiers. And those soldiers got out. And there was a cafe there, and I think they were going to go to the cafe or something. And my husband, my future husband, he started, and he had on combat boots. And I said, "Hey, a soldier, don't you get," but this part Flemish, see, "don't you get on my clean sidewalk with them muddy boots?" And he understood that. That's how I met him. So I think there was one soldier one time, of course we had them stationed in my hometown, see, and he always wanted to date, and I didn't know, my aunt spoke English, my mom's sister. I said, "You tell him," but I would never show up. Hey, but why did I date that man? He asked me for a date to go to the movies. And I accepted.
And how long did you date before you were
We
married?
dated till June of 1946. Almost a year. And then we got married. And but the reason he was there, he was on his way back stateside to be repatriated to go to the Pacific to fight. And he was in Camp Lucky Strike in France. And they picked in soldiers and sent them to my hometown, and he was one of them. He and another boy from Arkansas. And of course, my mom, she said, and they did send him to Reims, France, but, well, he had access to a jeep, and and my mom said, "Well, I guess he means business because he keeps coming back."
So what did he tell you about Arkansas, and where in Arkansas did you go to when you were married? You were married in Belgium, though.
Oh, yes.
Of course,
Oh,
you'd have to be,
absolutely.
yes.
Oh, yes. But he told me it was a little town where his family lived. His father was a farmer, and of course he had some family in Little Rock, Arkansas. And
What was the name of the town that you, the hometown that you went to?
Plummerville, Arkansas. And of course I stayed in touch with him, because I just found out Sunday, my brother-in-law called me, and Plummerville had an earthquake.
Oh my.
Sunday.
Well, what were your impressions when you came over to Arkansas?
I had no idea America was that big. I had no idea. And of course, you pick up a little English because we listened to the BBC in the daytime some. And of course they played American music, see. So I really came, Glenn Miller, he was my idol, And we'd sing, I never knew what we were singing, but we'd pick up the words. Finally we pieced a few of them together, and then there was a band in Holland, and Radio Hilversum, and they had a good band, and they played Glenn Miller's kind of music, but they could not use the American titles of the songs that they played. They had to
change it.
Change them to Belgium, Flemish.
When you were in Arkansas, then when you first came over, I assume that hopefully there was music, but did you feel at home? How long did it take you to feel at ease in Arkansas?
Not long. I just customized me very, very fast. And my mother said, do not, because they were in England during the First World War. My mom and her family. And she says, you know, those people, there are going to be a different culture from you. You must, you know, adjust to their culture. And I did that. And I made up my mind to do that. And I made up my mind, since, you know, I married an American, then I was going to have enough respect for him that I was not going to be some kind of an idiot. You know, I respected those people, and they were good to me. And I remember when I arrived in Lorac, I forget the day, but it was one morning, and it was the 19th of July. That's when I arrived, right. And my husband was there with his aunt and his cousins, and they all welcomed me with open arms, which is a great. And,
wonderful. Yeah.
And they, you know, they tried to be, and then we went to that town where, you know, he was from. It was about 45 miles from Lorac, I guess. Of course, they had a big party, and then the other family all came, you know, so I got to meet all of them. And they just opened their arms to me, and I liked them, and I adjusted. And they lived in the country, and I liked that, you know.
What did your husband do then? After the war?
Well, he went back to school.
Did he go back on the GI Bill?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I went to work, and
what did you do?
I went to work in a garment factory. And in those days, hey, 75 cents an hour was big money. And then he went to work for the highway department, the Arkansas Highway Department, and he retired after 35 years with them. So, you know, I have made a lot of good friends, and I adjusted myself. And lots of people ask me, could I go back and live in Belgium? Yes, I could. But I don't think it'd be this easy anymore. I am too much Americanized.
Too much now, right. Tell me something, Georgette. You mentioned at one time how your husband admired General Patton. Did he tell you stories of General Patton when you were back in Arkansas?
He said the toughest one he was ever under. And one, excuse me, we were.
Water if you want some.
Oh, he told me some stories, but one time they were interviewing George Patton's daughter on television. And this reporter asked, he said, did your dad talk as rough as some of the soldiers said he did? She said, no, my dad didn't talk like that. And my husband said, honey, you never were a soldier under your daddy, was you? He's the roughest talking guy he ever heard. And he said, excuse me, they were laying on the ground, and that was the winter when the Battle of the Bulge. That was the worst winter, or one of them I can remember in my life. And he said it was sleeting and snowing, and all power lines were down, and you name it, you know. Oh, he said, and they were just tired. It was freezing rain. And he said, I'm not going to say what he said, that so-and-so come flying through there on a tank, standing up. And he yelled at them, move, move, get up and move, move. He said, here they had to move. And he said, then what he hated, you know, was the thing that when they got to the border somewhere, the German border, then, okay, the general said, dig in, and he said, that ground was frozen and they had to dig in there, and he said, about the time you got in there, and it'd be dark and nasty, and you'd have yourself covered with that little poncho you had, he said, they'd holler again. Move, 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 up, and here they go again, he said. But it is an experience. And like I say, the war and all the things I did, and to help my mom hustle for food, because I thought I was pulling a fast one on the Germans, if you got by with it now. Because when they caught you, they took everything away from you. Well, you know, it was the best lesson I ever had in my life. And I do not regret it. And that's why I say to some people, you ought to, you know, just have to go back to what they call the good old days, you know. And my husband and I, you know, we had kind of a hard way to go. You know, at first when you get married and all of this and that, and then you have a child. And anyway, I can go back there. And what was amazing, you know, of course I knew what water wells were, but I had never, we always used, if you had to draw water, you know, we had a pump. We were already in Belgium now. And you had to pump the water, you know. But there, then if we wanted rainwater, we had to dip it out of the rain
barrel.
Yeah, with a bucket, because we used that to clean the house with and all of that, see. And there they used these well buckets, and they were long, and they were about that big around. But I knew how to do it. It didn't take me long, and I was you might say, a city girl. But I enjoyed living there on the farm and helping my father-in-law, and as a matter of fact, that's how I learned to drive, on the tractor.
Did you ever encounter any other war brides in Arkansas?
Only one. And then, for some reason or another, she left. But then the girls that came over with me, we all just scattered. And I was the only one that went to Arkansas. And one went to, where is it in Alabama? I'll think of it there. Anna. But I've often wondered, and my sisters have been trying to find out from some far relations from Anna, but they can't find out nothing, if she's still there or not.
Well, the other day I went on the internet and I found out that there is a War Bride Association in the United States.
Yeah, I knew that.
You knew that?
Yeah.
Where they get together, not very often, but where they, I guess there's a newsletter to help people get in touch with each other. So maybe if you got in touch with somebody there, you might find out where she could be.
But anyway, well, you know, this is one of the things my mom said. She said, now, when you get there, don't you try to find, you know, like Belgians, and just get the only people you associate with. No, you do not do that. You're going to be in America, so you make American friends. You associate with Americans, and if there are some, then sure, you remain friends. And, well, I met one other one, and she was from the French part of Belgium. And very, very nice couple. But they had an antique store, oh, I forget where, pretty close to Eureka Springs, Arkansas. Of course, that's in northwest Arkansas. That's pretty long ways away from, you know, we eventually, when he went to work for the Arkansas Highway Department, we moved to Little Rock, and then that's where I stayed till I moved here.
Well, Georgette, your story has been absolutely interesting and fascinating, and you certainly know how to roll with the punches.
Oh, honey, I do. I always have. And you know, can I tell a silly story?
Sure.
After 2 years that I had been in the States, I had to apply. I was on a green card, but we were privileged. The war brides were privileged, and I had to apply for American citizenship after those 2 years. My father-in-law took me to his attorney, and my brother-in-law used to say, he's a shyster. But I don't care. And I had my papers, took them with me, but I remembered everything. The name of the boat, you know, the ship that I came over, the Wilderness Albrook. It was a victory ship. And, oh, that lawyer, I forgot his name, but he filled out my papers. We mailed them in. And one Monday I was called to Little Rock for an interview. And I had to bring 2 witnesses that had known me since I was, you know, I'd been in Arkansas. Okay, we went. And, oh, this the judge's assistant. I had to go to the federal building. And he wanted to ask me some questions. The first question he asked me, he said, okay, he said, now tell me, who makes the laws in Arkansas? And I said, the governor, I guess. No, state legislature. Okay. Then he asked me, who had the power to declare war in America? And I said, the president, I guess. No, Congress. Well, never will I forget that. That is printed in this little brain. He said, Miss Turney, you don't know much about the American government, do you? I said, no, sir, I don't. And then he asked me why I wanted to become an American. And I told him why. I said, my husband is American, and my son was a baby. My child is American, and I do not want this thing to happen to me what happened to the Japanese. and were put in these detention camps, you know, because Arkansas had some of them. I said, I want to be with my husband and I want to be with my child. Okay, and that was my interview. And then he got a hold of my husband, and he said, you know, your wife didn't know much about American government, but I never had one in here before that was so sure of herself why she wanted to become an American. Well, I go home, and he brings me, you know, a book. I studied that book. 29th day of October, that same year, I was called to Little Rock to be sworn in as an American. And I was scared to death. Scared to death. And I knew all of this government and all of this and that. I studied because in those days there was no television or anything, you know. And in the meantime, I had taught myself to read. And all I had to do was hold up my right hand and pledge allegiance to the flag. And I got my papers.
Oh, that's a wonderful story.
So, one lady, her mother had the drugstore close to my home after I went to Little Rock. And she wanted to know who interviewed me. I said, you know, that guy, he was kind of sharp, you know. Georgette, you couldn't have picked the federal building over and got a worse one than him. She said, he's a grouch. But I will never forget that. And I laugh about it. But I never had to go to school or anything to become an American citizen. And
oh, well, Georgette, I'll tell you, we are very happy that you are an American citizen.
I am very happy. And I think all of these, we call them GIs, that fought for my freedom. Because, as I told one Belgian, and that hasn't been too very many years ago, Freddie, and he's a teacher, and I don't want to hear this, that we do not give everybody an opportunity to be an educated person. That is here for you. I can tell you that. And he said that we were not, you know, we did not treat all the young people like we should. Some of them got privileged. And I said, Freddie, I'm going to tell you something, buddy. I know. Number one, I said, my son has an education. I said, because of his daddy and me. But if he had not had the smarts, he would have never gotten where he is today. And I'm very proud of that.
I'm sure.
But I worked hard, and I seen to it was that. I said, Freddie, nobody gave it to me. I said, I missed many a trip to Belgium, boy. But his education came first. My father, he was an engineer. And he was high on education, which I didn't get because of the war, or I'd have gone to a 4-year school, but no, he would not allow that because that was too dangerous, and that was right. But anyway, no regrets. But my son had it, and I said to him, your parents, they remember the war just like I do. But you don't, do you, boy? Well, he got to being ugly about the Americans, and I'm not going to buy that. And I said, boy, if them so-and-so Americans hadn't come and liberated us, you'd be speaking German, buddy. And I wouldn't be speaking American. So thank you, Stars and Stripes.
Oh.
That's all I got to say.
Oh,
And I don't know, he didn't like it, but then, hey, I could care less. But now when they go to knock on the Americans, then I get, you know, they push my buttons. And I'm not going to have that. I know what the Americans did for me. And when, you know, they would come, well, Carolyn's daddy flew out of that. That's how her mother met her daddy. But they'd come over, and believe me, you've seen flocks of blackbirds going over. They were like flocks of blackbirds. I don't know how many. And the two sorties that bombed my hometown was toward the end of, it was in September. But we had a chemical factory at the edge of my hometown. And they came and bombed it, and 2 weeks later they liberated us. They killed 17 people. But we see them going, two sorties of them. They went, I was, of course, swimming in that canal. Uh-oh. They're too low because they're going to Millsbrook. They're going to get it. And it wasn't for a few minutes. Here, those two sorties came and they followed the canal. And that's where we got bombed. And they threw out slings. They came back 2 times. And the harder I swam, the less water I covered. But anyway, it's an experience. Yes. But I do not regret it. It was a good lesson for me. I'm sure. And I think the American GIs, I will the rest of my life. And I'm not trying to brag, but my son, and that's the reason I'm here, my son is the highest civilian over the Mobile district of the Corps of Engineers. And he did it on his own. You know, we went to school. He went to, he graduated from the University of Arkansas at Little Rock, in Fayetteville. Too big a party school, he said. Although he likes to party, you know. But he felt like, he wrote me a letter, but his buddies were all going to Fayetteville. And finally he wrote me, Mom, I feel like I'm wasting yours and Dad's money. Can I come back home and go to LRU, which was a private university, and then became the University of Arkansas. And I wrote them back and I said, son, I didn't tell you to go up there, and it's got to be your decision to come back. Your room is here. That's what you want. I was glad to have him back home, because all I ever got home when he came home was a carload of dirty clothes and you know. But and then when he graduated, he wanted, well, he got some scholarships, but now, hey, I don't know, whatever I heard, he had one at Columbia, but there was no way we could do that.
I know. Well, I think you did a wonderful job.
But he he got a National Foundation Fellowship to the University of Oklahoma. And he got his doctorate there, and he almost has a doctorate in civil engineering too. The boy was his dad always said, boy, you got so many degrees, can't nobody afford to hire you. And he was married and just had his first child when he went to work for the Corps of Engineers. And he's been with them going on 30,
Oh.
35 years.
Well, Georgette, thank you so much for sharing your war experiences, your war bride experiences, and the joy that you take in your family. And it has been a pleasure.
Well, thank you
to
so
have
much.
here.